Greetings, everybody. It's RPG Grandma, and we're going to take a look at Death in Arduin from Arduin Grimoire number 5, volume 5. Death in Arduin is as real as it is in our world. Anyone can die at any time for any number of reasons. However, what happens after death in Arduin is quite different from what happens in our own world. To begin with, one must remember that even though resurrection is indeed possible, for the vast majority of people, it just isn't done. This is due to the simple fact that they, as common folk, are not important enough for their own religion, church, cult, etc., to go to all that trouble over. And truth to tell, most would be horrified at even the thought of such a thing happening to them. Be that as it may, one must also understand on a gut level as well as intellectual level that Arduinian gods do participate in the affairs of lesser beings, most specifically where death is concerned. It is their domain, so to speak. Because of this, the soul of all newly dead hover in a sort of timeless limbo between this place and the eternal plane, the final abode of the dead. For 30 Arduinian days, 750 hours, these souls maintain a direct link or line to the dead flesh bodies. At the end of this time, the link is fully dissipated, never to be reforged again without the direct intervention of the gods themselves. And this is something the gods of Arduin seldom do, even for their most devout of followers. This link is what allows their resurrection rituals, as Deathbreaker, see earlier grimoires, to function, and why such functions deteriorate rapidly in effectiveness. As the link dissipates, so too do the chances of successful resurrection. Negative 13% after the first day, and a cumulative negative 3% per day thereafter. Although, even on the last 30th day, there would be still a 1% chance of being able to perform such resurrection magics. After all, nothing is absolute in Arduin, not even death. Note also that the conditions of the body has a great deal to do with this link and how fast it dissipates. In a hot, humid climate, a body would rot very fast, considerably lessening by GM education that 30-day time span. On the other hand, a well-preserved frozen body might add, again, GM educated, to the percentage chances, i.e. the slow deterioration of the link. You should further take into consideration the gods. The more devout and pious the deceased was, the more likely is that the god would have taken him over the other side that much sooner. GM decision. After all, it is a devout worshiper that the gods wish to honor by bringing them over to their side. It is also pretty safe to say that once taken by their own god or gods, people just won't want to come back and will refuse to return to their bodies. This is, of course, ignoring totally such other religious problems as 1. Those who reincarnate as part of their life, death, rebirth cycle. 2. Those who are literally eaten by their gods and are forever gone from existence. 3. Those who have sinned against their god or gods and have been condemned by same to some hell or other lesser purgatorial punishment. 4. Those who would not cleave to any god or religious tenets. This yet but list is particularly infinite in its variations and problems, and so too are the adjudications possible to a GM. It requires careful thought, to be sure. Finally, there is a little bit about how to feel when your favorite character dies and is permanently gone. To begin with, I know that the loss of a carefully crafted character, when with dozens, hundreds, and even more hours of thought, playtime, and feelings invested, is a truly painful experience. I know that one will be full of sorrow and anger at such a loss. But as I know these things to be true, I also know there are several things you must think about these feelings. They are: 1, was the death due to your own mistakes? If so, then is your anger directed at the right person, i.e. yourself, and not the GM? And if it was your mistake, is anger the right reaction to what happened? 2, if the death was no one's fault, and most likely unavoidable, did your character die well? If not, why not? 3, do you know what dying well really means? If you do, and your character did, then shouldn't you be happy and not angry? 4, did you learn anything from your character's death about the character, about yourself? A character's death should be a learning and growing experience for you. 5, if all of this has been a growing and learning experience for you, as it rightly should be, then shouldn't you be happy to have participated in such an event? After all, growth and learning experiences is what life is all about. With these thoughts behind you and us, we will now address ourselves to just what constitutes a good death and a straw death. In short, a good death is one that's met any one of the following criteria. If some purpose was served, if a friend or companion's life was saved by your sacrifice, if your character died as his race, culture, class indicated he should. For instance, a barbarian warrior, devout follower of Megalon, the war god, surrounded by his foes, going down fighting, taking several with him. What a glorious way to go to his god, for him at least. 4, if your character's death caused other characters to improve themselves in any way. A straw death is one that hasn't met any of these criteria. If he was killed without warning, without no chance to react, for instance, a long-range sniper shoots him or a 10-ton stone block falls on him, both with absolutely no warnings. If the GM simply kept increasing his monster's attacks upon the character in an obvious "I'm going to get you" scenario. If a fellow adventurer character backstabs him with little or no reason, and simple greed is no reason at all. If a character dies in just the opposite way that his culture, class, race would prefer. For example, if that barbarian warrior worshiper Megalon should die from food poisoning or super herpes or whatever, but not in battle. So knowing the differences between the two alternatives, it is in your own best interest to try for a good death and to actively avoid the latter. In fantasy role-playing gaming, as in life, this is all one ever can hope for, and in knowing and acting out of this simple idea, we are much better for it. Let life triumph whenever and wherever it can, but shrink not death in a good cause or in good company. That is the one true thing in all fantasy role-playing. Learn it and live it, and you will grow from the power inside you. So there's some wisdom, both for players and GMs, in that chapter from Arduin Grimoire Volume 5. And I think people should ponder it. A good death is a good death. A bad death is a bad death in the game. And you should learn from these things, both GMs and players. And you should set some definite rules in your whatever game you're playing about how death and if resurrection is going to happen, how that's going to work. And it should make some sort of logical internal sense in the game. And, you know, you're not always going to get saved. It's just the way it is in role-playing games. Anyway, everybody have a great day.